The evening had started just like any other at Bellini's, a cozy yet upscale Italian bistro tucked between tall buildings in downtown Chicago. The warm glow of pendant lights cast gentle shadows across white tablecloths as the dinner crowd began to fill the restaurant. In the corner stood a gleaming black baby grand piano that added both elegance to the space and soft melodies during the busy dinner service. Among the busy servers weaving between tables was Lily, a petite woman in her mid-20s with dark hair always neatly tied back in a practical bun. She moved with quiet efficiency, balancing plates along her arm with the skill that comes only from years of practice. Her smile never faltered, even when dealing with the most demanding customers, though few patrons ever really looked at her face. To most diners, she was simply the waitress, invisible except when needed. What none of them knew, not the wealthy businessman tapping impatiently on his water glass, nor the young couple celebrating their anniversary, nor even most of her co-workers, was that Lily had a secret that went far beyond her ability to remember complicated orders without writing them down. "Table 12 needs more bread," called out Tomas, the head waiter, as Lily passed by with a tray of drinks. "On it," she replied, delivering the cocktails to a group of laughing friends before smoothly changing direction toward the kitchen. The restaurant was particularly busy tonight, and she'd been on her feet for nearly 7 hours straight. Her lower back ached, but she pushed the discomfort aside. She needed this job too badly to complain. In the kitchen, amid the chaos of clanging pots and sizzling pans, Lily grabbed a basket and quickly filled it with warm sourdough. As she worked, she hummed softly to herself, her fingers tapping a complex rhythm against the counter. The tune wasn't the pop song playing faintly over the kitchen speakers. It was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the piece she'd been practicing in her mind all day. "You always doing that," remarked Hector, the dishwasher, nodding toward her tapping fingers. "You play music or something?" Lily's cheeks flushed slightly. "Used to," she said simply, offering no further explanation as she hurried back out to the dining room. The truth was both more complicated and more heartbreaking than she cared to share with her co-workers. Lily had been playing piano since she was 4 years old, when her grandmother had noticed how the little girl would press her tiny fingers against the kitchen table, mimicking the movements she'd seen on a television concert. Her grandmother, a retired music teacher with an old upright piano gathering dust in her apartment, had started giving her lessons. By age 8, Lily had shown such remarkable talent that her grandmother had scraped together enough money for proper lessons. By 12, she was performing in recitals where audience members would whisper in astonishment about the girl's natural gift. By 16, she had earned a partial scholarship to a prestigious music program, with dreams of concert halls and recording studios dancing in her head. Then life intervened, as it often does with dreams. Her grandmother fell ill during Lily's second year of music school. Medical bills piled up. The choice became clear: continue her education or help the woman who had raised her after her parents' divorce. It wasn't really a choice at all. Lily withdrew from school, picked up extra shifts at the cafe where she worked part-time, and found the waitressing job at Bellini's for the evenings. For 3 years, she had cared for her grandmother, playing the old upright piano in the evenings to fill their small apartment with the music that connected them. When her grandmother finally passed away, Lily was left with medical debts, a half-finished education, and a heart full of music with nowhere to go. The piano at Bellini's had become both a source of joy and pain for her. Every evening she watched as different pianists, some talented, others merely adequate, sat at the instrument she longed to play. Sometimes during her break she would stand in the shadows, closing her eyes and moving her fingers at her sides, imagining how she would interpret the pieces they played. "Lily, order up for table 9. The chef's call pulled her from her thoughts as she delivered the breadbasket to table 12. She hurried back to the kitchen, tucking away thoughts of music as she focused on the immediate demands of her job. As the evening wore on, Lily noticed an unusual buzz around the restaurant. The manager, Vincent, seemed particularly tense, straightening his tie repeatedly and peering anxiously at the door. When she passed by the hostess stand with empty plates, she overheard snippets of conversation. Famous music producer, whole table of industry people, expecting everything perfect. Lily felt the familiar flutter of nerves that always accompanied thoughts of the music world she'd left behind. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that those dreams belonged to a different life now. Just after 8 o'clock, a group of well-dressed men and women were seated at the restaurant's best table. Lily wasn't assigned to their section, but she noticed how her manager hovered nearby, personally ensuring that everything was flawless. One man in particular seemed to be the center of attention. Older, with silver hair and designer glasses. He carried himself with the easy confidence of someone used to being in charge. "That's Howard Chen," whispered Delia, another waitress, as they both paused near the service station. "He's produced albums for some of the biggest names in the industry. I heard he's starting some new project, and that whole table is full of executives and investors." Lily nodded politely, trying to ignore the painful twist in her chest. In another life, she might have been playing for people like Howard Chen, instead of wondering if his table would leave a decent tip for their server. The evening progressed normally until about 9:30, when Vincent suddenly appeared in the kitchen, his face pale with panic. He was on his phone, pacing back and forth between the walk-in cooler and the prep tables. "No, that won't work. I need someone now, not in 2 hours. Yes, I understand you're sick, these things happen." But he ended the call with a frustrated sigh, immediately dialing another number. Lily continued with her work, but couldn't help overhearing as Vincent made call after call, each one increasing his obvious distress. Finally, after the 5th call ended in another rejection, she approached him carefully. "Is everything okay?" she asked, knowing full well it wasn't. Vincent ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Paolo called in sick, some stomach bug. He was supposed to play tonight, and we've got Howard Chen and half the music industry sitting out there expecting live piano music with their dessert and cognac. I've called everyone I know, but it's Friday night and any pianist worth hiring is already booked." Lily's heart began to race. The words formed in her mouth before she could reconsider. "I can play." Vincent looked at her as though she'd offered to fly to the moon. You play piano?" She nodded, suddenly feeling foolish under his skeptical gaze. "I studied at the conservatory for 2 years. I was working toward a performance degree before I had to leave." He seemed torn between desperation and disbelief. "Why have you never mentioned this before, in all the time you've worked here?" Lily shrugged, unable to explain how talking about music still hurt, how watching others live the life she'd planned for herself was a special kind of torture she endured every shift. It never came up," she said lamely. Vincent checked his watch and grimaced. "Look, normally I'd want some kind of audition, references, something. But right now I'm desperate." "Can you really play? Not just Mary Had a Little Lamb or Chopsticks?" "I can play," Lily said quietly, with a conviction that finally made Vincent pause and really look at her. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Fine. There's a black dress in the staff closet that Paolo's replacement sometimes wears. Go change quickly. You've got 5 minutes." Lily hurried to the small employee locker room, her mind racing faster than her feet. What was she doing? After 3 years of not touching a piano, of deliberately walking past music stores to avoid temptation, of canceling her streaming subscriptions because classical music made her cry, now she was about to play in front of a famous producer? Her hands trembled as she slipped into the simple black dress, slightly too large for her frame but passable with a quick adjustment of the belt. She pulled the elastic from her hair, letting it fall around her shoulders in soft waves, and used her phone camera to check her appearance. The face that looked back at her seemed both familiar and strange. The same brown eyes and small nose she saw every day, but with a spark of something she hadn't seen in years. Hope, perhaps, or fear. Maybe both. Taking a deep breath, Lily stepped out of the locker room. There was no turning back now. As she walked toward the piano in the corner of the restaurant, she felt strangely disconnected from her body, as though she were floating slightly above the polished wooden floor. No one noticed as she approached the piano. The diners were engaged in their conversations, the clink of silverware against plates and the murmur of voices creating the restaurant's usual comfortable hum. Even Howard Chen's important table paid no attention to the small figure in black, who carefully adjusted the piano bench. Lily sat down, adjusting her posture automatically as years of instruction came flooding back. She placed her hands on the keys, surprised to find them steady now. The cool ivory beneath her fingertips felt like coming home after a very long joe. For a moment she closed her eyes, letting herself remember. Then with a deep breath, Lily began to play. The first notes Lily played were soft, almost hesitant, like a question asked in a whisper. She had chosen Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece that had always felt to her like moonlight spreading across still water. Her fingers remembered the way, even after all this time. Muscle memory guiding them across the keys as though the 3 years away from a piano had never happened. By the fourth measure, a nearby conversation paused briefly. By the eighth, 3 more tables had grown quieter. By the time Lily reached the piece's first crescendo, a wave of silence had begun to spread across the restaurant, conversation by conversation falling away like autumn leaves in a gentle breeze. She didn't notice. With her eyes half closed, she had fallen into that familiar trance-like state where nothing existed except the music flowing from her fingers. The aches in her back from hours of carrying trays, the anxiety about bills due next week, the grief that still lingered like a shadow, all of it melted away as she played. At the hostess stand, Delia stood with menus clutched to her chest, mouth slightly open in astonishment. In the kitchen doorway, Chef Anton had paused with a plate in his hand, listening. And at table 7, Vincent, the manager, was frantically texting the restaurant owner. "You need to get down here now, the waitress is playing piano." Really playing? Like Carnegie Hall playing. As Lily finished the Debussy piece, she kept her head bowed for a moment, reluctant to break the spell. When she finally looked up, she was startled to find dozens of eyes fixed on her. A heartbeat of silence hung in the air, and then applause erupted, starting from Howard Chen's table and rippling across the dining room. Heat rushed to Lily's cheeks. For a moment, she considered fleeing back to the kitchen, back to the comfortable anonymity of her waitress uniform. But then she caught sight of Vincent at the edge of the room, giving her an enthusiastic thumbs up. Taking a deep breath, she turned back to the keys. What should she play next? Her mind raced through her old repertoire. Something to build on the mood, something to show range. Her fingers found their position and she launched into Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu. The rapid notes cascaded like rainfall, her left hand steady while her right danced across the upper register in dazzling arpeggios. At table 7, Howard Chen leaned toward his dinner companion, speaking quietly without taking his eyes off Lily. "Who is she?" he asked the woman beside him, a sleek talent agent named Rita who prided herself on knowing everyone worth knowing in the industry. Rita shook her head slightly. "No idea, must be new. I would have remembered her if I'd heard her before." Howard watched Lily's hands moving with such precision and emotion across the keys. There was something raw and authentic in her playing that caught his attention, a quality that couldn't be taught. "Only nurtured, find out," he said simply, and Rita nodded, already signaling for their server. At the piano, Lily had begun to find her confidence. After the Chopin, she moved into a Gershwin piece, then a beautiful arrangement of a folk song her grandmother had taught her. With each piece, she felt more of herself returning, parts of her identity she had packed away and nearly forgotten. Her 5th selection was Rachmaninoff, and as her hands stretched to reach the challenging chords, she felt a presence beside the piano. Looking up briefly, she saw Vincent, his face flushed with excitement. "Keep playing," he whispered. "They love you. Mr. Chen's table is asking about you." Lily nearly missed the next measure, her concentration broken by a sudden surge of nerves. Howard Chen was asking about her, the man whose name she'd seen on dozens of albums, whose productions had won multiple awards. She forced her attention back to the keys, reminding herself to breathe. Meanwhile, across the restaurant, the dinner crowd had transformed. People who had come merely to eat were now having an unexpected experience. Some had turned their chairs to watch. Others were recording brief videos on their phones. Conversations, when they happened at all, were hushed and centered on the music and the mysterious pianist. "Wasn't she our server earlier?" A woman at table 12 asked her husband, who shrugged in bewilderment. At the bar, 2 regulars were debating whether the piano had always been there. They'd never really noticed it before tonight. Though they came weekly, and at Howard Chen's table something unusual was happening. The powerful producer, known for his critical ear and brutal honesty, sat perfectly still, his dessert untouched, his expression unreadable behind his designer glasses. Beside him, Rita was typing rapidly on her phone, searching industry databases and social media for any mention of a pianist matching Lily's description. As Lily finished the Rachmaninoff piece, she allowed herself a small smile. The music had unlocked something inside her, Confidence, perhaps, or simply joy. She'd forgotten how it felt to lose herself in playing, to connect with listeners through nothing but sound and emotion. The applause this time was immediate and enthusiastic. Several people stood. An older gentleman at a corner table wiped away a tear. Vincent approached the piano again, this time with a glass of water on a small tray. "You're amazing," he said, as she took the glass gratefully. "The owner is on his way. Half the restaurant is asking if you're here every night." Lily took a sip of water, suddenly aware of how dry her throat had become. "I'm sorry I never mentioned I could play. It hurt too much to talk about." Vincent looked confused, but before he could ask what she meant, a woman in an expensive-looking blazer approached them. It was Rita, Howard Chen's dinner companion. "Excuse me," she said, extending a business card to Lily. "I'm Rita Vasquez with Pinnacle Talent. We'd love to speak with you when you have a moment." Lily took the card with fingers that trembled slightly. Of course. Thank you. I still have about 20 minutes in this set, if that's all right." Rita smiled. "Perfect. We'll be waiting." As Rita walked away, Vincent stared at Lily with new eyes. "You do realize who that is, right? And who she works with?" Lily nodded, unable to form words. The restaurant, the piano, Vincent. Everything seemed slightly unreal, as though she might wake up at any moment in her small apartment, late for her shift. "Play something else," Vincent encouraged her. "Something special." Lily turned back to the piano, her mind racing. Something special. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before, beginning the piece she had played for her grandmother on the night before she died, a composition of her own that she'd never performed for anyone else. It began softly, with a simple melody that spoke of loss and remembrance. Then it built, adding layers of complexity, moments of tension that resolved into unexpected harmony. It told a story without words. Her story with all its joy and heartbreak. In the kitchen, the staff had stopped working to listen through the open door. At the bar, the bartender was pouring drinks with his head tilted toward the music. And at Howard Chen's table, the producer had removed his glasses, his eyes closed in concentration. When Lily finally played the last delicate notes of her composition, the restaurant remained completely silent for 3 heartbeats. Then Howard Chen stood and began to applaud. One by one, others joined him until the entire restaurant was on its feet. Lily stood from the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. She gave a small, slightly awkward bow, unused to such attention. As she stepped away from the piano, reality began to seep back in. She was still a waitress who had bills to pay and a shift to finish. She headed toward the kitchen, intending to change back into her uniform, but was intercepted by Vincent. "Oh, no, you don't," he said, steering her toward Howard Chen's table instead. "Your section is covered. This is more important." "But I need the hours," Lily protested weakly. Vincent laughed. "Trust me, after tonight, that's going to be the least of your worries." Howard Chen stood as they approached, extending his hand. "That was extraordinary," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose opinions shaped careers. "Especially that last piece. I don't believe I've heard it before." "You wouldn't have," Lily replied, finding her voice. "I wrote it." Howard's eyebrows rose. "You compose as well?" "Interesting." He gestured to an empty chair. "Please join us for a moment." As Lily sat, feeling terribly out of place among these polished industry professionals, she caught sight of the restaurant owner hurrying through the front door, his face flushed from rushing over. Vincent intercepted him, speaking urgently and gesturing toward Howard Chen's table. "Tell me," Howard said, reclaiming her attention. "Where did you study?" "Juilliard, Curtis." "The conservatory," Lily answered. "For 2 years. I had to leave before finishing my degree." Rita leaned forward. "And you've been working here as a waitress since then?" "With that level of talent?" There was no judgment in her tone, just genuine curiosity. Still, Lily felt a flush of embarrassment. "Life happens," she said simply. "My grandmother got sick. Someone had to pay the bills and take care of her. Music school doesn't cover medical expenses." Howard nodded thoughtfully. "No, it certainly doesn't. But talent like yours shouldn't be serving pasta. It should be serving audiences." Lily's heart began to race. Was this really happening? "I've been developing a new project," Howard continued. "A series of recordings featuring new compositions performed by their creators. Your piece just now. It has exactly the emotional quality I've been." Rita handed Lily another business card. We'd like you to come to the studio next week. Bring any other original compositions you have. We'll do a proper audition, discuss possibilities. I don't know what to say, Lily stammered. Howard Chen smiled for the first time that evening. Say yes. The rest we can figure out later. As Lily sat there surrounded by people who suddenly saw value in the talent she'd hidden away, she felt a strange mixture of joy and grief. Joy for this unexpected chance. Grief for the years lost and for her grandmother who wasn't here to witness this moment. Yes, she said finally. Yes, I'd like that very much. Outside the restaurant windows, the city lights glimmered like stars against the darkness. Inside, at a simple table in an Italian bistro, a new chapter was beginning, one that had seemed impossible just an hour before. The next morning, Lily woke up in her small apartment, sunlight streaming through the thin curtains she'd hung years ago. For a moment she lay still, wondering if last night had been a dream. The business cards on her nightstand, one from Rita Vasquez and another from Howard Chen himself, confirmed it had really happened. She reached for her phone and was startled to see dozens of notifications. Texts from coworkers she barely spoke to, messages from old classmates she'd lost touch with, even an email from her former piano professor, subject line, "Is this you?" With growing amazement, Lily opened the email and found a link to a social media post. Someone had recorded a minute of her playing last night and shared it online. The caption read, "Waitress at Bellini's turns out to be piano prodigy. Most amazing thing I've ever seen." The video already had thousands of views and hundreds of comments. Who is she? That's Rachmaninoff. Professional level.
I need to eat at this restaurant.
Lily set down her phone, feeling suddenly overwhelmed. 3 years of carefully maintaining a low profile, of tucking away her musical identity, and now overnight she had become piano waitress. The thought made her laugh, then bite her lip anxiously. What did this mean for her job? For her carefully structured life? Her phone rang, Vincent from the restaurant. Lily, have you seen it? You're everywhere. His voice bubbled with excitement. The owner wants to talk to you. We've had 63 reservation requests since last night. People asking specifically if you'll be playing. I don't know what to say, Lily replied, echoing her words from the night before. Say you'll come in early today. The owner is thinking about a whole new arrangement. Piano nights featuring you. Higher pay, of course, higher pay. The words cut through Lily's confusion. Her rent was due next week, and she'd been planning to pick up extra shifts to cover it. I'll be there at 3, she promised. After hanging up, Lily sat on the edge of her bed, trying to process everything. The thought of playing regularly again both thrilled and terrified her. And then there was Howard Chen's offer to audition for his project. Could she really step back into the music world after walking away? Her eyes drifted to the small upright piano in the corner of her living room, her grandmother's piano, the one possession she couldn't bear to sell even when money was tight. Dust covered its closed lid. She hadn't opened it since the funeral. With slow steps, Lily walked to the piano and lifted the lid. The keys looked back at her, ivory and ebony, familiar and strange at once. She ran her fingers lightly over them without pressing down, remembering. Her grandmother's voice seemed to whisper in the quiet apartment. Music isn't just something you do, Lily Flower. It's something you are. Taking a deep breath, Lily sat down and began to play, softly at first, then with growing confidence. The piano was out of tune after years of neglect, but it didn't matter. This wasn't about perfection. This was about reconnecting with the essential part of herself she'd buried alongside her grandmother. 3 hours later, Lily entered Bellini's through the back door, as she'd done hundreds of times before. Everything looked the same. The industrial dishwasher humming, the prep cooks chopping vegetables, the servers folding napkins for the dinner service. Yet everything felt different. There she is, Chef Anton called out when he saw her. Our star pianist. The kitchen staff broke into applause. Hector, the dishwasher who had noticed her tapping fingers just yesterday, grinned broadly. I knew it, he declared. I told you she was musical. Lily smiled, embarrassed by the attention, but touched by their genuine excitement for her. Before she could respond, Vincent appeared in the doorway. The owner's waiting in the office, he said, and you'll never believe who called asking about you this morning. Lily followed him through the kitchen, curiosity overcoming her shyness. Who? Channel 7 News. They want to do a feature on you for their Hidden Talents segment. What? No, I couldn't possibly. Too late, Vincent said cheerfully. The owner already said yes. They're sending someone tomorrow evening. Lily felt a flutter of panic. Television? Interviews? This was moving too quickly. Yesterday she'd been just another server trying to make rent. Now people wanted to put her on the news? In the small office off the wine cellar, Mr. Bellini himself waited. Though he owned 3 restaurants across the city, he rarely visited this location. Lily had only met him twice before. Today he stood as she entered, extending his hand with new respect in his eyes. Lily, the woman of the hour. Please sit down. She sat nervously, hands folded in her lap. I've owned restaurants for 27 years, Mr. Bellini began, and I've never seen anything like what happened last night. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. Reservations are pouring in, people asking specifically if the piano waitress will be performing. Lily winced slightly at the nickname, but Mr. Bellini didn't notice. I'm prepared to offer you a new position, he continued. Official house pianist 4 nights a week. You'll play 2 sets each evening, with breaks in between. We'll pay you triple your current hourly rate, plus you keep any tips from the tables. Lily's eyes widened. Triple her current rate would solve so many problems. Her medical bills from her grandmother's illness still haunted her mailbox every month. What about my serving shifts? She asked. I need the hours. You can keep 2 lunch shifts if you want them, Mr. Bellini said. But something tells me you won't need them for long. Vincent mentioned you're meeting with Howard Chen's people next week. Lily nodded, still hardly believing it herself. Well then, Mr. Bellini smiled. Consider this arrangement temporary. A stepping stone. Though I hope when you're famous you'll remember where you got your second start. Outside the office, Lily took a moment to catch her breath. Change was happening so fast it made her dizzy. She'd spent years in careful routine. Each day, predictably like the last, focused solely on survival. Now possibilities were unfolding in all directions. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Rita from Pinnacle Talent. Howard moved some things around. Can you come to the studio tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Bring any original compositions you have. Address to follow. Tomorrow? Lily had been counting on having a week to prepare, to practice, to mentally ready herself. But opportunity rarely arrived on a convenient schedule. She texted back a simple, yes, I'll be there, before she could overthink it. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Regular customers who'd seen the video online asked for autographs. Co-workers who'd barely spoken to her before suddenly wanted to know her life story. Mr. Bellini announced to the dinner crowd that she would be their new regular pianist. Starting next week, which earned enthusiastic applause, and then, at 9 o'clock, Vincent nodded toward the piano. Your debut as our official pianist, he said with a wink. Go show them what you can do when you've had time to prepare. Walking to the piano felt different this time. Last night she'd been terrified, acting on impulse. Tonight she chose this path deliberately, each step taking her closer to reclaiming the life she'd set aside. The restaurant fell quiet as she sat down. Dozens of expectant faces turned toward her, phones ready to capture the moment. Lily closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. Then she began to play. She started with Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, letting the familiar notes fill the space. As she played, she found herself reflecting on the strange twists of fate that had brought her here. If Paolo hadn't called in sick, if she hadn't found the courage to speak up, if Howard Chen hadn't been dining that particular night, life could change in an instant. Sometimes for worse, as she'd learned when her grandmother fell ill, but sometimes it seemed for better. As she transitioned to her second piece, Lily noticed a young girl watching her with wide, wonder-filled eyes. The child couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, about the age Lily had been when she first fell in love with the piano. Seeing that expression of pure amazement reminded Lily why she'd been drawn to music in the first place, not for applause or recognition, but for the magic of creating something that could move another human soul. For her final selection of the evening, Lily played another of her own compositions. This one she'd written during her second year of music school, when everything had seemed possible. It was full of hope and determination, qualities she was rediscovering in herself now. When she finished, the applause was immediate and heartfelt. As she stood to acknowledge it, Lily caught sight of her reflection in the polished surface of the piano. She looked different somehow, more alive, more herself. Encore! Someone called from the back of the restaurant, and others took up the cry. With a small, genuine smile, Lily sat back down. This time she played not for the audience or the camera phones recording her, but for herself and for her grandmother, whose belief in her had never wavered, even when her own had faltered. Later that night, as she walked home under a sky scattered with stars, Lily felt lighter than she had in years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: the news interview, the audition at Howard's studio, the beginning of a journey whose destination she couldn't yet see. But for the first time in a long time, she was looking forward, not back. At her apartment, she didn't head straight to bed as usual. Instead, she sat at her grandmother's piano, now wiped clean of dust, and played softly into the night. Notes of possibility filled her small living room as she prepared for whatever might come next. The Pinnacle Studios building towered above Lily as she stood on the sidewalk, clutching a worn leather folder containing her sheet music. The morning sun reflected off the glass facade, making the structure appear to shimmer. Lily checked her watch, 20 minutes early for her appointment with Howard Chen. She'd barely slept last night, alternating between practicing her compositions and trying to calm her racing thoughts. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, a habit from childhood. Drawing a deep breath, she pushed through the revolving door and entered the sleek lobby. The receptionist looked up as she approached, a young man with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm Lily Chen, no relation to Howard," she added hastily. "I have an appointment at 10. Recognition flashed across his face. "The pianist from Bellini's. Rita mentioned you'd be coming in. I saw your video online, really incredible stuff." Lily blinked in surprise. Even here, people had seen the clip. "Thank you," she managed. "I'll let Rita know you're here." He picked up his phone, then paused. "Do you mind if I ask, have you always been able to play like that? Or did you study somewhere?" It was a question she'd answered a dozen times since yesterday. "Both, I guess. I started young, but I also studied at the conservatory for a while." He nodded appreciatively. "It shows. There's something really special about how you play." Before Lily could respond, the elevator doors opened and Rita Vasquez strode into the lobby. Today she wore a crimson blazer over a black dress, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun. "Lily, you're early. That's a good sign." Rita's handshake was firm and brief. "Come on up. Howard's just finishing a call." As they rode the elevator to the 12th floor, Rita glanced at the folder in Lily's hands. "Is that your music?" Lily nodded, suddenly self-conscious about the battered folder. "Just a few pieces. Some are still in draft form." "Perfect. Howard's most interested in the original compositions. Your technical skill is obviously exceptional. But what really caught his attention was the emotional quality of your work." The elevator doors opened onto a corridor lined with framed platinum records and music awards. Photographs of famous musicians filled the spaces between. Many posed with Howard Chen. Lily recognized Grammy winners, rock legends, and classical virtuosos, all under one roof, all connected to the man she was about to meet. Rita led her into a spacious room dominated by a magnificent grand piano, a Steinway that probably cost more than Lily would earn in 10 years of waitressing. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and tasteful acoustic panels lined the walls. In one corner, a small recording setup stood ready. "Make yourself comfortable," Rita said, gesturing to the piano. "Howard will be in shortly. Feel free to warm up if you'd like." When Rita left, Lily stood frozen for a moment, almost afraid to touch the beautiful instrument. Finally, she set her folder on the music stand and sat down gingerly on the bench. The keys felt different from any piano she'd played before, responsive to the lightest touch, perfectly balanced. She began with a simple scale, then a chord progression, just to feel the action of the keys. The sound was extraordinary, rich and resonant in a way that made her old upright at home seem like a toy in comparison. Closing her eyes, she let her fingers wander through a brief improvisation, losing herself in the pure joy of playing such a magnificent instrument. She didn't notice Howard Chen enter the room until she heard his voice. "Don't stop on my account." That was lovely. Lily's eyes flew open and her hands jerked away from the keys. Howard stood near the door, more casually dressed than he'd been at the restaurant, in jeans and a simple black sweater that somehow still looked expensive. "I'm sorry," she said automatically. "I was just communing with the piano," Howard finished for her, smiling slightly. "Every real pianist does it. It's how you get to know each other. He approached and extended his hand. Officially Howard Chen, though we met briefly last night. Lily Chen, she replied, shaking his hand. No relation, so I've been told. He settled into a leather chair near the piano. First, I want to thank you for coming on such short notice. When talent excites me, I don't like to wait. Lily nodded, trying to appear more confident than she felt. Tell me about yourself, Howard continued. The condensed version. I know you studied at the conservatory, left to care for your grandmother, and have been working at Bellini's since then. What I want to know is your relationship with music. When did you start composing? The question surprised Lily. Most people asked about her training or technique, not about her creative process. I've always made up little melodies, she said, thinking back, even before I had lessons. But I started writing them down when I was about 12. My first real composition was a birthday gift for my grandmother when I turned 15. And the piece you played last night? The one that wasn't Rachmaninoff or Chopin or Gershwin? That was for her too, Lily said softly. I wrote it during her final days. She never got to hear the finished piece. Howard nodded, a flicker of genuine sympathy crossing his face. That explains a lot. There was a quality to it, authenticity, emotional honesty. Those aren't things that can be taught, you know. Thank you, Lily said, touched by his insight. Now, he said, leaning forward slightly, I'd like to hear more of your work, if you're ready. For the next 45 minutes, Lily played her compositions. Some were complete pieces she'd refined over years. Others were fragments or works in progress. Howard listened intently, occasionally making notes on his tablet but mostly watching her with complete focus. Occasionally, he would ask her to play a section again, or explain what had inspired a particular piece. As she finished her final composition, Lily felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She'd never played so many of her own works for anyone before. It felt like showing someone pages from a private diary. Howard set down his tablet and was quiet for a long moment. Your technical skill is evident, he said finally. But what sets you apart is your voice. Your compositions have a distinct personality. That's rare, especially in someone who hasn't completed formal training. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. I mentioned last night that I'm developing a new project. Let me tell you more about it. He turned back to face her. It's called Hidden Voices, a series featuring undiscovered composers performing their own works. Not classically trained musicians playing the same Beethoven sonatas we've heard for centuries, but new voices with something original to say. We're planning an album release, a documentary about the artist's stories, and eventually a concert tour. Lily's heart began to race. Was he suggesting, I'd like you to be one of our featured artists? Howard said simply. Based on what I've heard today, I'd want to include at least 3 of your compositions in the album. The documentary team would want to film your story, how you went from music school to waitressing to being discovered. We'd provide coaching on performance techniques, media training, all of that. I don't know what to say, Lily stammered, feeling like a broken record. It seemed to be her default response to life-changing offers lately. Howard smiled. You could try yes, she said immediately, then paused. But what exactly would this involve? I still have bills to pay and my job at Bellini's. Of course. Howard returned to his chair. We'd offer an advance against future royalties, enough to cover living expenses while you focus on developing your material. There would be a contract, naturally, covering publishing rights, performance commitments, and so on. Rita can go through all of that with you. As if on cue, Rita entered with a folder of her own. All set in here? We are, Howard said, standing. Lily's going to be joining us for Hidden Voices. Can you walk her through the details while I take my next call? After Howard left, Rita sat down with Lily and opened her folder. Let me explain how this works. First, congratulations. Howard doesn't offer spots in his projects lightly. For the next hour, Rita outlined the proposal. A 6-month commitment to develop and record Lily's music, promotional appearances, the documentary filming, and eventually the concert tour. The advance was more money than Lily had seen in years. This is overwhelming, Lily admitted when Rita finally paused. Yesterday I was serving pasta. Today I'm discussing recording contracts. Rita smiled. Life can change quickly in this business. Take the paperwork home, read it carefully. Have a lawyer look at it if you want. But don't wait too long. Howard's eager to get started. On her way out, Lily passed the recording studio where Howard was working with another artist. Through the glass, she could see him gesturing enthusiastically as he spoke to a young man with a guitar. His passion for music was evident in every movement. Outside, the city seemed somehow brighter, more vibrant than it had that morning. Lily found a quiet bench in a nearby park and sat down, trying to process everything that had happened. Her phone rang. Vincent from Bellini's. Lily. How'd it go? Are you a star yet? She laughed. Not quite, but it went well. Really well? Great. Listen, Channel 7 will be at the restaurant at 6. The owner wants you to play a little something for the cameras. Can you make it? The news interview. With everything else happening, she'd almost forgotten. I'll be there, she promised. After hanging up, Lily opened the folder Rita had given her and began reading through the contract. The legal language was dense, but the opportunity was clear. This wasn't just a chance to play piano again. It was a chance to share her compositions with the world, to tell her story through music. She thought about her grandmother, who had sacrificed so much to nurture her talent. What would she have said about all this? The answer came easily in her grandmother's gentle voice. Music isn't something you do, Lilyflower. It's something you are. As the afternoon sun warmed her face, Lily made her decision. She would sign the contract. She would tell her story on Channel 7. She would play piano at Bellini's until the project began. And then she would step fully into the identity she'd tried to set aside. Not just Lily the waitress who played piano, but Lily the pianist, the composer, the artist. Standing up from the bench, she felt a lightness in her steps that had been missing for years. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with new challenges and unfamiliar territory. But for the first time in a long time, she was moving toward something, not just getting by. Her phone buzzed with another message, this time from Howard Chen himself. Forgot to ask, are you free next Thursday evening? Small dinner party at my place. Some people from the project I'd like you to meet. Bring yourself and any new musical ideas. HC smiling, Lily typed back, I'll be there. Then she headed toward Bellini's, ready to face the cameras, share her story, and play her heart out again. 6 months later, Lily stood in the wings of the Harrington Concert Hall, peeking out at the crowd that filled nearly every seat. Behind her, the other 5 musicians featured in Howard's Hidden Voices project chatted quietly, each dealing with pre-performance nerves in their own way. Theo, a former math teacher with a gift for avant-garde jazz, was doing breathing exercises. Zoe, once a night shift nurse who composed hauntingly beautiful cello pieces, was meticulously checking her instrument. Lily smoothed the fabric of her midnight blue gown, the first formal dress she'd ever owned. So much had changed since that night at Bellini's when she'd stepped in for the missing pianist. Sometimes it felt like she was living someone else's life. 2 minutes, everyone, the stage manager called softly. Howard appeared beside Lily, calm and confident in a perfectly tailored suit. Nervous? He asked. Terrified, she admitted with a small laugh. There are so many people out there. All here to hear you, Howard reminded her. Remember what I told you on the first day of recording? Lily nodded. Play for one person. Just one heart you want to touch? Exactly. Tonight, who are you playing for? Without hesitation, Lily replied, My grandmother. Howard squeezed her shoulder gently. Then she'll be the one to hear it most clearly. He moved on to offer last-minute encouragement to the others. The house lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience. Howard walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause. Lily watched as he approached the microphone, his presence commanding immediate attention. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this very special night, he began. 6 months ago, I set out to find unique musical voices that hadn't yet been heard. Composers with extraordinary gifts who, for various reasons, had remained undiscovered. Tonight, you'll meet 6 remarkable artists whose stories and music will, I believe, move you deeply. He gestured toward the wings. First, I'd like to introduce a young woman whose talent I discovered quite by accident, when she stepped in as an emergency replacement at an Italian restaurant where she worked as a waitress. Her journey from serving tables to this stage is a testament to perseverance and the enduring power of passion. Please welcome Lily Chen. Heart-pounding, Lily walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding, the applause overwhelming. She managed a smile and a small bow before taking her seat at the grand piano. Another Steinway, even more magnificent than the one in Howard's studio. As the applause faded into expectant silence, Lily closed her eyes briefly. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she imagined her grandmother sitting in the front row, her kind eyes filled with pride. When Lily opened her eyes again, her nervousness had been replaced by a sense of purpose. She began to play the piece that had first caught Howard's attention, the composition she'd written for her grandmother. Her fingers moved across the keys with confidence, born from hundreds of hours of practice and refinement over the past 6 months. The melody soared through the concert hall, telling its story of love and loss, of dreams deferred but never abandoned. From the corner of her eye, Lily could see the documentary film crew capturing the moment. The past months had been filled with interviews and filming sessions, as the team recorded the stories of each artist in the project. They'd visited her old apartment, filmed at Bellini's where she'd made her impromptu debut, even traveled to her hometown to see where she'd grown up and first learned to play. The resulting documentary, set to be released alongside the album next month, had already generated significant buzz after a 3-minute preview was shared online. From serving tables to standing ovations, the Lily Chen story had resonated with people around the world. As Lily played the final notes of her first piece, the audience responded with enthusiastic applause. She smiled, feeling a surge of joy so intense it almost brought tears to her eyes. This was what she was meant to do, what she'd always been meant to do. For her second selection, she played a new composition she'd written during the project, a piece that reflected her journey of rediscovery, with passages that moved from hesitancy to determination to triumph. When the concert concluded 2 hours later, with all 6 artists taking a final bow together, the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Flashbulbs popped and shouts of "Bravo!" echoed through the hall. Howard joined them on stage, beaming with satisfaction at the success of his project. At the reception afterward, Lily found herself surrounded by well-wishers, music critics, and industry professionals eager to discuss her work. A representative from the conservatory approached her about returning to complete her degree with a full scholarship. The director of a prestigious summer music festival invited her to be a featured performer. It was dizzying and wonderful and slightly overwhelming. Holding up okay, Rita appeared at her elbow with a glass of water. "Barely," Lily admitted. "I never expected all this attention. Get used to it. The album pre-orders are already exceeding expectations, and your solo tracks are getting the most advanced praise from critics." Before Lily could respond, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning, she found herself face to face with Vincent and several other staff members from Bellini's. "Lily," Vincent swept her into a hug. "You were amazing. We closed the restaurant early so everyone could come." Chef Anton handed her a bouquet of flowers. "The kitchen isn't the same without you humming while you pick up orders." "We're so proud," Delia added. "Though we miss our piano nights, the new guy isn't nearly as good as you were." Lily laughed, touched by their support. "I miss you all too, especially the tiramisu." Speaking of which, Chef Anton produced a small box, a little taste of home, for after all this fancy reception food. As her former co-workers moved on to enjoy the reception, Howard approached with an older man Lily didn't recognize. "Lily, there's someone I'd like you to meet. This is Robert Harmon, director of the National Symphony Orchestra." Lily's eyes widened as she shook the man's hand. "Ms. Chen, your performance tonight was exceptional," Mr. Harmon said. "Howard tells me you've composed a piano concerto?" "I'm working on one," Lily replied, surprised that Howard had mentioned it. The concerto was still in its early stages, something she'd started just weeks ago. "When it's ready, I'd be very interested in discussing a possible premiere with our orchestra. New voices in classical composition are rare and valuable." After Mr. Harmon moved on, Lily turned to Howard in disbelief. "The National Symphony? For my concerto?" "But it's nowhere near finished. And now you have the perfect motivation to complete it," Howard said with a smile. "That's how this business works, Lily. One opportunity leads to the next if you're ready for it." Later that night, as the reception wound down, Lily found a quiet moment alone by the large windows overlooking the city lights. 6 months ago, she'd been serving pasta and hiding her talent. Tonight, she'd performed to a standing ovation and been offered opportunities she'd never dared to dream of. Her phone chimed with a text message from a number she didn't recognize. "You played beautifully tonight. Your grandmother would be so proud. Dr. Reynolds. Her eyes filled with tears as she recognized the name of her grandmother's doctor, who must have seen the documentary preview or heard about the concert. The simple message touched her more deeply than all the professional accolades combined. There you are. Howard joined her by the window. Hiding from your admirers? Just taking a moment to process everything, Lily said, wiping away a tear. Sometimes I still can't believe this is happening. Howard nodded understandingly. Success can feel surreal, especially when it comes suddenly. But talent like yours was bound to be discovered eventually. I'm not sure that's true, Lily said thoughtfully. If Paolo hadn't gotten sick that night, if you hadn't been dining at Bellini's, if Vincent hadn't been desperate enough to let me play, if, Howard echoed with a small smile. The music world is full of if stories. What matters is that when the moment came, you were prepared. You had put in the years of practice. You had written those compositions. You had the courage to take your place at that piano. Lily considered his words. I suppose you're right, though I still feel lucky. Lucky and deserving aren't mutually exclusive, Howard pointed out. Now, are you ready for what comes next? The album release, the tour, the interviews, the teaching offers I've been keeping quiet about until after tonight's performance. Lily laughed. More surprises? This is just the beginning, Howard promised. The question is, are you ready for it? Lily gazed out at the city lights, thinking of all she'd experienced in the past 6 months. The hard work of recording, the emotional journey of sharing her story for the documentary, the joy of connecting with the other artists in the project, and now, the triumph of tonight's performance. Yes, she said with certainty. I'm ready. As they walked back to join the remaining guests, Lily thought about the unlikely path that had led her here. From her grandmother's old upright piano to this concert hall, from serving tables to taking bows, from hiding her talent to sharing it with the world. In the end, perhaps Howard was right. When opportunity knocked, she had been prepared to answer, not because she had planned for this specific moment, but because she had loved music too deeply to ever truly abandon it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, interviews with major music publications, meetings about the upcoming tour, decisions about which opportunities to pursue next. But tonight, Lily would celebrate how far she had come and honor the journey that had brought her here. Every detour and delay that had, in the end, led her exactly where she was meant to be. As she rejoined the reception, someone asked if she would play one more piece in an impromptu encore for the few dozen people still lingering. Smiling, Lily made her way to the small piano in the corner of the reception hall. This time there was no nervousness, no hesitation, only gratitude and joy as her fingers found the keys and began to play. The music filled the room, telling a story without words, her story, of a waitress who became a pianist, of a dream deferred but never defeated, of a young woman who had at last found her way home.